Vanessa from Crafty Gemini Creates, and in this video tutorial I'm going to teach you how to make this super cute and very professionally finished clutch purse. Now what we're going to be using for this is actually kind of like a little kit. It's called the Modern Clutch Pro, and this is what comes in the little bag when you buy it. It comes with the pattern instructions. You can see this big thing with all the step-by-step instructions, and I'm going to show you how to do it in the video. So I think that will kind of give you some shortcuts too on how to put it together. Then you also get a sheet that has all your pattern pieces in it, and there's only 4 pattern pieces. So I would definitely recommend this to a confident beginner, I would say, in sewing. And then you get the hardware piece for it, okay, which is this. It's the closure. So here's the finished clutch. My hands are a little slippery. There you go. And you can see it opens and closes like that. It's fully lined on the inside. You don't see raw edges anywhere. And it just is a really cute bag, nice and structured. I think these would be great to give as gifts, say for prom time, bridesmaids gifts, anything like that. And it's a good size as well. So let's go over what we're going to be using, because you need a few different materials and things to put this type of a project together. Now remember that there's always a link in the description box below where you can click to find all the materials that I'm using here, both the fabrics, all the different interfacings, because we'll be using 3 different stabilizers for the fabrics, and then also the little kit that comes with the pattern and the hardware closure for your clutch. Okay, so setting that aside, the fabric that I'm working here I think is just gorgeous for this type of a project. This is called Sea Holly by Sarah Campbell from Michael Miller Fabrics, and I actually am using a fat quarter bundle. So these are chunks of fabric that are about 18 to 22 inches, and you are going to need 1 fat quarter for the outer lining, or the outer part of the bag, and then another one for the lining, because we have specific pieces that we need to cut out. From the pattern sheet that comes in your kit, you are going to cut out all the pattern pieces, and these are the 4 of them here. You're going to see right on there, it tells you exactly what you need to cut out. So from this size, you need to cut it on the fold, and this needs to be cut out of your lining fabric and the sew-in stabilizer. So let me show you. This is my lining fabric. I've folded it in half, pretty sides touching. I'm going to lay this part of the pattern on the fold, and that's where you would want to cut around, okay? And that way, you know, you get a symmetrical piece cut out. And you're gonna repeat that to main fabric, and then of this piece also for the sew-in stabilizer. Now the sew-in stabilizer that we're gonna be using is Pelon 40. It's a kind of, I would say, it's not lightweight, but it's like a medium weight stabilizer. It's not fusible at all. But you would repeat the same thing to this. Fold it in half, lay the pattern piece on it, and cut it out, okay? Now, one thing to note, that whenever you're cutting out pattern pieces, you want to make sure that you're transferring all the markings to your fabric. So I'll grab a fabric marking pen. On this one here, you want to make your marks on the wrong sides of the fabric. That's why we had it folded with the pretty sides inside. I just poke this through with a pen, these 2 areas here for dots. Poke it through with a pen, and that way when you lay it there, you'll then have access to the space that you want to mark with your fabric marker. So there are my 2 dots. You would flip this over and repeat that on the other side as well, okay? You're gonna do that step for your lining fabric, and as you can see, for the main fabric, you do have the same thing. And then it also has you marking a center line arrow. So repeat that, cut this one out of your main fabric only. Then we have 2 other pattern pieces here, and they all say to cut them out of peltex. So let's go over the next stabilizer, and that is a peltex. It's also a Pelon product. You can probably already see just from this angle how stiff this is. I use this a lot for fabric postcards, and it's great for bag making when you want to add some really good structure to the project, which this clutch uses, okay? This is not the fusible version. There is a fusible version, but this one is just the sew-in, okay? So we have a link, remember, again, to all the different stabilizers and products you need. So we cut that out of our peltex, and then we also cut out the other little rectangle of the peltex, okay? So once you have all those pattern pieces cut out, you'll see that the pattern piece tells you to mark these areas. The second little rectangle here of peltex gets laid right here. And you want to transfer these marks that you see from the pattern piece to the peltex so you know exactly where to line this up. I usually will just put a clip or 2 on the ends, and then you, based on the instructions, you're going to stitch close to the outside edge. I will keep it usually to about 1/8 of an inch, and I have a finished sample one here for you so you can see how that looks, okay? And we just stitched it right around. Now we can set this aside. Let's start prepping our fabric, because we've cut out our outer fabric, we've cut out the lining, the sew-in interfacing that's going to go with the lining, and the peltex. There's one more stabilizer you got to cut out, and that is your fusible fleece, okay? And this is also a Pelon product. It's like a fleece, and on one side is smooth, the fleece side, and on the other, there's little kind of scratchy little bumps, and that is the adhesive that makes it fusible on the one side, okay? So the pattern instructions, there's no actual pattern piece for the fusible fleece. It just tells you to cut out a square that's 11 3/4 by 11 3/4. And so the next step to do with that fusible fleece is to fuse it to the wrong side of your outer. Okay, don't get the pieces confused. The lining fabrics it was listed on the pattern piece what to cut for that. For the outer, we just cut the pattern piece from the fabric and that square I just told you of the fusible fleece. Then you take it over to your ironing board. You're gonna lay the fusible fleece with the fusible little scratchy side touching the wrong side of the fabric, okay? And I kind of just hold it in place, flip it over, and press it. Now, one thing to note is that the fusible fleece is a little bit smaller than the main fabric. And the reason for that is because when you stitch up the sides, you're reducing a lot of that bulk. If the fleece reached all the way over to the edges, you'd get way too much bulk there. So just eyeball the square where you're putting it, because it should be about 1/2 inch or a little more around the edges, okay? Fuse that into place like I've already done here. And make sure that you have your marks everywhere. Now the next step is to prep the outer and the lining, because then we'll put them together to stitch up the whole bag. So the next step is to take your lining or your outer piece that already has the fusible fleece, fold it in half so that you're matching up your marks. You see that? Okay, so we're going to fold it in half, matching up the raw edges on the top and the sides. Okay. And you're going to stitch up using 1/2 inch seam allowance just on the sides. So start here, take a few back stitches and come down, and you'll see that the 1/2 inch will have you clearing that fusible fleece to the right side. I back stitch at the end as well, and then you'll repeat that to the other side here also, okay? Now, you're also going to do that for the lining piece, okay? You have your lining piece. The sew-in interfacing is not fusible like this was, so you're just going to stitch it together from the dot to dot. And let me show you. I have one here already. So I basically laid the fabric down, ugly side of the fabric face up, and put the sew-in interfacing on top. Because it's not fusible, you need to baste it together, and you do that just by stitching from dot to dot on both pieces. And you'll have those dots on both your fabric and the sew-in interfacing so you can match up everything correctly. So just stitch from there to there, and from there to there, okay? And now you're gonna put these together. This one is already a step ahead, but I'll show you how to do that. That's what I talked about here with the outer, stitching up the sides. You'll repeat that for the outer and also for the lining. Then the next step is to make the little gussets or that flat bottom on both the outer and the lining. So here I have an outer that's already been started for you. I'm gonna show you how I stitch up the sides here. Make sure these edges match up. I'm going to stitch this down, and then we'll get into showing you how to make the little box corner. So let's head over to the sewing machine. Make sure I have my 1/2 inch seam allowance. Okay. After you have that, you're going to want to snip the corner a little bit to reduce some of that bulk there. Then we'll come in here and open that seam up, further reducing that bulk, okay? And one quick way to give that a press is to actually lay it with this down onto your ironing board and press it from the inside. Just a little is fine. Oh, I didn't catch all of it, but you get the idea. Press your seams, take your time with that, and press that seam open. Then you're going to reach in here with your hand, and we're going to create a triangle. So do you see how that is? It's flat there, but when I reach inside, I'm going to turn it so that this center seam now is running right down the middle of like a triangle peak here, okay? Then you'll take your ruler, and the instructions say to measure across a 2-inch, where's my pen? Here. A 2-inch line across. So for that, I'm just going from here, measuring 1 inch, 2 inch. This 2-inch line needs to be right on the edge. So there we go. Right across here, it's spanning 2 inches across, and I'll mark that line. Then I'll just take a clip just to hold that steady and head over to the sewing machine and stitch it back down that line, and just take a few back stitches at the beginning and at the end. After you're done stitching that down, you want to trim it about 1/8 of an inch away from that seam line. Okay? And you repeat that to both corners, remember, again, for the outer and also the lining piece. So when you do that, you end up with something that looks like this. So we have an outer that has the fusible fleece. Remember, you have stitched from dot to dot on both your pieces, on the outer fabric itself and on the lining, because I think I forgot to mention that earlier. But make sure that you stitch from line to line. You're not stitching through anything else, just the fabric. But these are going to be very important guidelines as we move along in the construction process. So go ahead and do that. And it's also going to stabilize that seam for you for the last step in the process, okay? So from dot to dot on both, and then on the one that had the sew-in stabilizer, we stitched through both layers, okay, dot to dot. All right, so now we have these two. We've boxed the bottom on both. The next step is to put one inside the other. And to do that, I want you to leave the outer with the pretty side inside, so you should be looking at the fleece side, and flip the lining so that the lining fabric itself is facing out. Poke out all the corners. You can give it a good press if it needs it. Okay? And then you're going to slip one inside the other so that pretty sides are touching. You see how the pretty lining fabric and the pretty outer are touching? That's how you want to lay them in here. Now, take your time pushing this all the way in. Make sure that the flat bottoms are matching for both fabric pieces. Line up your center seams here. Match up raw edges. Put your clips in place and hold everything. And if you're pretty precise cutting and sewing, it comes together super easily. You don't really have to fight with it too much. All right, so I am going to put another clip right in the center just to hold everything steady. And now the next step is to stitch from dot to dot, but in the opposite direction. So where we have stitched from dot to dot here, we're now going to do it from a dot on one side around to the next dot. So you're going from dot to dot across the side seams only, okay? So I'm going to stitch from here to here. Back stitching at the beginning and at the ends. I'll leave all this open, and on the opposite side I'll do the same. I'll stitch from dot to this dot across the other side seam. Okay, so let's head over to the sewing machine and get that done. And for this you'll probably have to expose the free arm on your sewing machine. Let me move this here so that you can drape this over. Now here's what you have. From dot to dot, and that's the red thread you see here, from dot to dot across the side seam, from dot to dot across the side seam. Here's my openings right along the front lines, okay? You're going to reach in here, and I want you to flip it out and leave the lining out. So I'll show you. So it's important to backstitch there, because once you start flipping anything out, if you haven't backstitched, you can rip those stitches out. So I'm poking the little gusset parts out on both fabric pieces, and I'm leaving the lining out of the bag. Normally you'd want to tuck it in, but we still have to add more structure to the bag. That's where our peltex piece comes in. So kind of fold it up. This can be a little tricky, but just you have plenty of space to get it in there through any of the side openings, and you're going to fit it in so that the bottom part that's reinforced with the double layer of the peltex is going right along the bottom side here of the gusset, okay? And you want to add it to the outer. So feel the side. If you forgot which fabric you chose for the outer fabric, feel around for the fleece and you know that that's where it goes. So I'm going to push it in here. And then just take your time to work it in the bottom. All right. And I like to grip it at the bottom just like this to make sure that that reinforced bottom panel is fitting right along where it needs to. If it's not, you can always tug on it and push it a little bit more to where it needs to be. But that looks really nice, and it's nice and sturdy. All right, so now we can push the lining into the bag. And it's good to have those openings because you can always reach in and help fix anything else that you need to in there. Slide everything into place. All right, so now since we have these two openings here, you want to make sure that you have, if we look in here, we have our outer with the fleece, the peltex, and then the lining with the sew-in interfacing. So what you want to do here is drape the outer fabric over the peltex part. You see how I did that? Right here. This is my outer. I'm going to drape that excess seam allowance over the peltex. And that's how you want to do it. And sometimes when it gets cut up on the side, so just feel in there, pull that outer fabric out and get it so that it drapes completely over the peltex interfacing in there. And then you can see how I'm tugging out it on the sides to bring in the lining fabric. Those previous stitching lines, the basting lines that we did, are going to be your guide because that's where you're going to fold your fabric to turn under that seam allowance. Okay? So turn it in there, and don't worry if the stitching is there, you're not going to pull it out, but it's not going to show because that's where we're going to actually glue the closure for the clutch purse also. Okay, so let's put a few clips here. Get everything to be nice and flush. And just take your time with this part because this is, you definitely want it, you're almost at the final stretch, so you definitely don't want to mess up your bag now. Keep up, you know, the precision, and you'll end up with a really professional looking bag. All right, so I've done that one there. Repeat it to the opposite side. All right, so I've folded both excess seam allowances on our openings over and I've clipped them in place. Now, one thing to note, if you find that you're struggling with it to get it to lay exactly where you want to, go ahead and give it a good press and then try it again and then clip it into position. If it's a little off here, it's not going to be the end of the world because it's also going to be covered by the closure. But the next step is to head over to the sewing machine and top stitch the openings shut. And for this, you want to stitch super close to the edge just to conceal it and close it up. So I would say about 1/8 of an inch or so from the top edge. Again, we're going to expose the free arm on the machine. Whoops. And take your time with this. If you see that it's moving on you, I prefer you take your time because it's not that long of a seam. All right, let's put that back. At this point, I like to give it a good press just to get everything to lay nice and flat for you. So just from the inside, kind of work my way around, making sure to hit the part that I just stitched as well. Okay. Now the last step, you can see our little clutch purse here. The last step is to actually add the closure. So in your kit, you get the metallic closure for it right here. You remove the tape and it comes on a little sheet of kind of like a cardstock paper. But you can see this one is in a silver color. Now to do this, you're going to have to glue metal to fabric. Now a lot of times for projects like this, you'll see the manufacturers recommend some really kind of like stinky toxic glues, and I don't like to work with those type of products. So I have actually tried out my favorite craft glue, which works great, fabric to plastic, and now fabric to metal, because this is actually the glue that I used to create this sample for you, and you can see that it's held in place really, really nicely, okay? So that's what we're gonna be using, and remember that there's always a link in the description box below on where you can get all the cool products that I try out for you guys. So to add this, first of all, when you look at the top stitching, we basically top stitch from the same places where we had our dots in the markings of our fabrics and interfacing from here to here. So if you lay this over here, you'll see that those the top stitching that we just stitched is actually going to be covered by the closure itself, okay? So the first thing you want to do is find the center point of your clutch. And you can do that a few different ways, just by measuring it. It's quite bulky, but you can try to fold it in half, okay? If I take my ruler here and measure for you guys, it's about 11.5 inches, okay? So half of that is gonna be 6 3/4, no, 5 3/4. So at 5 3/4, I'm gonna make a mark. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 3/4 is somewhere there. Somewhere here. Make sure those match up. Yep, they look pretty good. And I'm lining it up on the outside because that's what I'm going to be looking at, okay? So the idea is that you're going to line up the center part of the closure right here, right on that center line, so that you know that, you're not going to have a top of a clutch that's buckling on you, okay? So one other thing that you can do also to make sure and for some added precision is to put the buckle right there, take some painter's tape or washi tape or masking tape, any low tack tape is going to work fine. All right, so we're going to lay a chunk of tape here on the sides. I'm matching up the center line of my closure. I want it to match up with the center line of my bag. And I want the closure itself to cover up all that top stitching. So just make sure you have it where you need it to be. And just try to put some type of a tape or a marker. You can even just put a pin in there or even a clip, to tell you the truth. Just so that it's your marker. Okay, so that looks good right there. And then we're going to repeat that to the other side. And so what I do is I just pull on the sides so it's nice and centered and split the middle. And I come across and see right where my clip is, I put another one on the front end. And that looks pretty good to me. Okay? Now to add the glue to this, you'll see when I open this that the channel in there is quite small. So you're going to need something because to like get it to spread in there a little bit easier, because the nozzle on the Ultimate Glue is quite thick. So you don't want it to start going everywhere. What I've done is the little cardstock paper that the hardware came taped to, I'm just going to fold it in half and kind of use it as a little paintbrush. You don't need a lot of this glue at all, okay? Less is definitely better. And if you ever try a different glue or you try this glue and you maybe don't use enough, you can always go back, just rip off the hardware and re-glue it. So I'm putting a little bit, and this stuff is quite thick, so it's not very watery at all. And I'm just going to come in here and kind of just rub it. Not on my fingers. And so take your time. If you have a little brush, sometimes at home I use a little tiny screwdriver and just kind of dabble some in there. You want to stop, don't glue all the way to the ends. You want to just put some glue about 1/2 inch in from the edges, just enough to have it on the inside, okay? So I'm going to take my time, add some glue here, and I'll show you how to add it to the top of the fabric. All right, so we have the first one glued, and you want to kind of close it up and see where this one is going to go. So it closes this way, so I want this one on the back end of this. And all you got to do is let it fall inside the purse. Okay, first of all, let me get this glue off my fingers. And you're just going to push the top edge that's been top stitched right into that channel. It's not difficult at all. Just hike it in there. And it helps too if you audition it before you put the glue, but I've made a few of these already, so I kind of already have a good idea of how hard I need to push up in there. Look at it from inside and outside. Make sure that you don't see any of your top stitching lines. That way you know that you have it hiked up all the way in there. And then what I like to do is just go ahead and put some clips to help secure that in place while it dries. If you put enough clips, you don't really have to let it set too long. I would maybe let this set 2 to 5 minutes or so and then go back and do the opposite side. So I'll let this sit for a little while and I'll meet you all back here when we're ready to do the second side of the closure. All right, so I've let that sit there for a little bit. I'm not going to remove the clips just yet, but I do want to go ahead and just get the other side done because I'm a little impatient like that. So to do it, remember we have to be looking at the bottom of that channel. So one way to do it is to kind of reach in here to the bag, and as you see it dropped in there, look at it from here and use whatever you're using to kind of brush in that glue from this angle. Or you can try to do it like this and tip it forward this way so you can see it. So just kind of maneuver it around and work it out till you figure out what works for you, okay? So again, I'm gonna just drop some of this glue in a few spots in here and then use my little paper of cardstock or whatever to brush it around. All right, so I grab it by the top here. Again, push that fabric underneath. Because I have my marks, I know that nothing has moved on me with those side clips markings. Get your fabric in there and start pushing it up in there. And then you definitely want to let the glue set. I would leave it out at least 24 hours or so. After a few hours, you may tug on it and see that it's nice and adhered, but just give it the full cure time so you don't have to go back and kind of do it again in case it rips off, okay? So once that's done, you're going to let it sit and let it cure completely. Then you can remove your clips, and then you're probably wondering, well, she's not done. You got to tuck in these corners, and I'll show you how to do that on this fully cured sample here. So this is what you'll end up with, right? Once it's all glued into place and set. So you're going to open it up as wide as you can get it and simply tuck in the sides. That's all you got to do. Tuck them in under the little hardware hinge here and then close it up. And that's it. Your Modern Clutch Pro is complete. I think this is a really, really fun project. If you're a confident beginner, definitely give it a try. Would make a great gift. And remember that you can find the link to the pattern with the hardware kit and all the stabilizers and everything you need in the description box below. Definitely give the project a try, and if you do, take some pictures, post them to our social media sites. You can add them right to the Crafty Gemini Creates Facebook page. And of course, if you enjoyed it, hit the video with the thumbs up below, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss out on my future videos. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.